The first thing Moses asks at the burning bush is for a name. It is the fourth thing that happens. The angel appears. Moses turns aside. God speaks. And then Moses says, "If I come to the people of Israel and tell them the God of your fathers has sent me, and they ask me, 'What is his name?' what shall I say?" The question seems obvious. It seems natural, but it is not, because the people of Israel already know the name of the God of their fathers. They have known it since Abraham. The name is El Shaddai, God Almighty. Abraham used it. Isaac used it. Jacob used it. So why does Moses think they will need a new name? And why does God answer as though the question is not about a name at all? The answer God gives is Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. Translators have struggled with it for centuries. I am who I am is the most familiar version, but that is an interpretation, not a translation. The verb Ehyeh is the first-person singular imperfect of Heya, the Hebrew verb to be. But imperfect in Hebrew does not specify time. It indicates an action that is incomplete, ongoing, or habitual. So Ehyeh can mean I am or I will be, or I was depending on context. And that is the problem. God gives Moses a sentence that refuses to be locked into a single tense. It is not a name in the way the Egyptians gave names to their gods. It is not a noun that can be grasped. It is a verb that keeps moving. Moses asks for something he can hold, and God gives him something that cannot be held. The ancient world knew what a name was supposed to do. A name revealed character, origin, function, or jurisdiction. If you knew the name of a god, you could call on that god with authority. You could invoke that god in prayer, in ritual, in battle. The name gave the worshiper a point of access. But the name God gives Moses does not do that. It does not pinpoint a location or a function or a jurisdiction. It does not say, "I am the God of the mountain," or "I am the God who fights," or "I am the God who heals." It says, "I am what I am," or "I will be what I will be," a sentence that defines God only by God's own freedom. The name is not a door. It is a wall. The person reading this in a pew or in a living room, trying to sort out what to believe or how to pray, has probably done the same thing Moses did. Asked for something specific. Asked for a word that would make sense of suffering, or a label that would condense God into a manageable category. And the text says that is not what you get. You get a verb that refuses to stay in the past tense. The Hebrew word behind the burning bush does not go into a noun form. It stays in the verb form. The name that God gives for the people to call him is not Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh as a title. It is simply Ehyeh, I will be. God says, "Say to the people of Israel, Ehyeh has sent me to you." That is stunning. In the ancient Near East, gods had names that were nouns. Baal meant Lord. Dagon meant grain. Chemosh meant subduer. But the God of Israel gives a name that is the first-person singular of a verb of existence, in a tense that looks forward. Not I was, which would be a report of the past. Not I am, which would be a statement of present location. But I will be, which is a promise of presence yet to come. The grammar matters because the people of Israel are about to need that kind of promise. They are in slavery. They have been in slavery for generations. Their prayer life probably sounds like God of Abraham. If you are real, where have you been? And God's answer is not here, is a record of what I have already done. The answer is here, is what I am about to do. Tell them my name is the one who will be with you in what comes next. The name is not a monument to past faithfulness. It is an advance contract on future faithfulness. And yet there is more. Later in this same chapter, God gives Moses a second form of the name. He says, "I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as El Shaddai, but by my name Ehyeh I did not make myself known to them." Ehyeh is the third-person form of the same verb. It means he is or he will be. The people are not supposed to call God, "I will be forever." They are supposed to talk about God as he is, as the one whose existence and action are not dependent on their perception. But the first revelation is the first-person form, because the relationship begins with God saying I to them before they can say he about him. That is the structure of covenant. God names himself first. The open loop that the text creates is this: Moses asked for a name so he could answer the people. And God gave him a sentence that cannot be used as a name, not in the conventional sense. You cannot put Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh on a temple wall. You cannot carve it into a seal. It is not a title. It is a declaration of autonomy. And yet, it is the only declaration God makes about himself in the entire encounter. Everything else, the burning bush, the sandals, the commissioning, is about Moses. The name is the only thing about God. And it says, I am the one who determines what I am. I am the one who decides what I will be. You do not define me. There is a person reading this who has spent a long time trying to make God fit into a system, a theology that explains everything, a framework that predicts God's behavior, a prayer strategy that guarantees results. And the name at the burning bush says that system will not hold, because the name is a verb that will not let you categorize it. The verb moves, it changes, it adapts to the context, and God is saying, I am like that. I will be what the situation requires me to be, not what you assume I will be. That is terrifying, and it is liberating. Terrifying because it means you cannot put God in a box. Liberating because it means God is not stuck in the past. The God of Abraham is not a museum exhibit of what he did for the patriarchs. He is the God of the present and the future. He will be what he will be in the Exodus. He will be what he will be in the wilderness. He will be what he will be at Sinai. And later, he will be what he will be in the incarnation. That last sentence is not an accident. It is the bridge that John the evangelist builds when he writes his gospel. He knows the grammar of Exodus 3. He knows that the divine name is a verb in the imperfect tense, open-ended, forward-looking. And when Jesus stands before the religious leaders in John 8 and they ask him who he thinks he is, Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am. He does not say I was. He does not say I existed. He says I am. The same verb, the same tense, the same refusal to be locked into past or future, the same claim to absolute presence, which means the name Moses heard at the bush is the name Jesus claimed in the temple. And the question the text leaves hanging is whether the people hearing it understood what they heard. The Pharisees certainly understood. They picked up stones. They knew what he was claiming. But the real tension does not end with the Pharisees. It ends with the reader. Because the name is still moving. It is still a verb. It is still refusing to be pinned down. And the person who reads John 8 has to decide whether that name is blasphemy or whether it is the whole point. The stones that the Pharisees picked up in John 8 tell you everything you need to know about what they heard. They did not hear a man claiming to be older than Abraham. They heard a man claiming to be the God of the burning bush. The penalty for blasphemy was stoning, and they reached for the stones before the sentence was even finished. But what is strange about their reaction is what they did not do. They did not ask Jesus what he meant. They did not say, explain yourself. They did not give him a chance to clarify. They knew exactly what the words meant. The only question was whether Jesus had the right to say them. The grammar of John 8:58 is even more precise than the grammar of Exodus 3. In Exodus, the verb eie is imperfect, open-ended, carrying the sense of both present and future. But in John, the Greek is ego eimi, present tense, indicative mood, first-person singular, not I was or I will be, pure present. And the contrast is built into the sentence before Abraham came to be, I am. Abraham came into being. Abraham had a beginning. Abraham was born, lived, and died. The verb that appears here for Abraham's coming into existence is genestai, the aorist infinitive of genomai, to become, to happen, to be generated. Abraham became. Abraham was produced from something. He came from a line, a womb, a moment in history. But the verb for Jesus is eimi, continuous, unbroken, present. He is where Abraham began. The weight of that verb eimi would have landed on the Greek-speaking Jews in the temple with a force that is hard to recover in English. They knew the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Hebrew Scriptures. They had heard the voice from the burning bush rendered as ego eimi, ho on, I am the one who is. They had read the words of Isaiah where God says again and again, ego eimi, I am he, claiming exclusive divinity. When Jesus said those two words in the temple courtyard, he was not simply asserting pre-existence. He was placing himself inside the space that the Hebrew Scriptures had reserved for God alone. The people who heard it did not need a commentary. They reached for stones because the grammar itself was a claim of divinity. But the scene in John 8 does not happen in a vacuum. It happens during the Feast of Tabernacles, the most physically vivid festival in the Jewish calendar. For 7 days, the temple courts were lit by enormous golden lamps that illuminated the entire city. Water was poured out at the altar in memory of the water from the rock in the wilderness. And it was during this feast that Jesus stood up and said, "I am the light of the world, and if anyone thirsts, let him come to me and drink." He took the two central symbols of the feast, light and water, and claimed them for himself. The controversy in John 8 is not an isolated argument. It is the climax of a week-long confrontation in which Jesus has been systematically claiming the symbols that belong to the presence of God with Israel. When he finally says, "Before Abraham was, I am," he is not introducing a new idea. He is naming the source of everything he has already said and done. There is a person reading this who has heard the claim that Jesus is God for years and has never quite known what to do with it. It has remained an abstract theorem, something to be affirmed or denied on a doctrinal checklist. But the Feast of Tabernacles setting forces the claim into physical reality. Light and water are not abstractions. They are what a person needs in darkness and in thirst. When Jesus says, "I am the light," he is not giving a lecture on metaphysics. He is saying that the darkness you are walking in right now has an actual source of illumination that is a person. When he says, "I am the water," he is saying that the thirst you cannot name has an actual source of satisfaction that is a person. The name from the burning bush was never intended to be a piece of theology. It was intended to be the answer to the specific needs of a people in slavery. But the text does not end with the stones. It ends with Jesus hiding and leaving the temple. That detail matters. He does not stay to be stoned. He does not perform a sign to prove his claim. He simply disappears from their sight. John says, Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple. The one who claimed to be the self-existing God does not defend the claim. He withdraws. And that withdrawal is itself a revelation. The name does not need to prove itself. The burning bush did not argue with Moses. It just burned. The presence was enough. The claim was enough. The decision was left to the one who heard it. There is a trap most readers fall into when they confront this passage. They want to turn the claim into a theological formula to be affirmed or rejected as an abstract proposition. But the text is not asking whether you believe that Jesus is pre-existent. It is asking whether you will respond to the name the way Moses did, or the way the Pharisees did. Moses heard the name and took off his sandals. He knew he was on holy ground. The Pharisees heard the name and picked up stones. They knew they were on contested ground. Both responses come from the same recognition: this name changes everything. The difference is whether you see it as a gift or a threat. The person reading this, who has spent years trying to earn God's approval by getting the theology right, is missing the point of the name. The name is not an exam. It is a presence. The question is not whether you can explain the relationship between the Father and the Son. It is whether you will stand in the presence of that Son the way Moses stood in the presence of the bush barefoot, speechless, knowing that you are on ground you did not make holy and cannot control. The name is not a piece of information to be mastered. It is a fire that either draws you closer or drives you away. The burning bush of the gospel is Jesus on the cross. That is where the name of God is spoken into the darkest human condition. In John's gospel, the crucifixion is not a tragedy. It is an exaltation. Jesus is lifted up on the cross the way the serpent was lifted up in the wilderness. And when he is lifted up, he draws all people to himself. The name that was revealed as "I will be present with you" becomes "I will be present in your death." The one who said before Abraham was, "I am" is the same one who says from the cross, "It is finished." The verb tetelestai in John 19:30 is a perfect passive. It means it has been completed, and the result stands forever. The name that began in Exodus as an open-ended promise, a verb looking forward to what God would do, becomes on the cross a verb that looks back at a finished work. The imperfect of the bush becomes the perfect of the cross. The promise that was always ahead of you has now been accomplished behind you. The application for anyone reading this is not to figure out the theology of the Trinity. It is to decide whether the name that God gave at the bush is the name you will trust when everything else fails. The name is not a piece of information to file away. It is a claim on your life. When Jesus says, "I am," he is not offering a definition. He is asking. The first thing Moses asks at the burning bush is for a name. It is the fourth thing that happens. The angel appears. Moses turns aside. God speaks. And then Moses says, if I come to the people of Israel and tell them the God of your fathers has sent me, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say? The question seems obvious. It seems natural, but it is not, because the people of Israel already know the name of the God of their fathers. They have known it since Abraham. The name is El Shaddai, God Almighty. Abraham used it. Isaac used it. Jacob used it. So why does Moses think they will need a new name? And why does God answer as though the question is not about a name at all? The answer God gives is Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. Translators have struggled with it for centuries. I am who I am is the most familiar version, but that is an interpretation, not a translation. The verb Ehyeh is the first-person singular imperfect of Heya, the Hebrew verb to be. But imperfect in Hebrew does not specify time. It indicates an action that is incomplete, ongoing, or habitual. So Ehyeh can mean I am or I will be, or I was depending on context. And that is the problem. God gives Moses a sentence that refuses to be locked into a single tense. It is not a name in the way the Egyptians gave names to their gods. It is not a noun that can be grasped. It is a